And to Ottawa next, where the newly revived Canada-U.S. Relations Cabinet Committee held its first meeting, revived by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau following Donald Trump's election win. Parliament Hill correspondent Glenn McGregor joining us now. Glenn, this may have been a closed-door meeting, but we have an idea of what the group's priorities are.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a back to the future moment for the Liberal government. They are reprising the strategy they used during the first Trump term, trying to engage the U.S. at a lot of different levels. Cabinet ministers meeting with their counterparts in the U.S., meeting with border officials from border states, governors, unions getting involved, big business. That's what they call the Team Canada approach. Chrystia Freeland looks to be the person who is going to be leading this again. Of course, remember the first time around, she was the main counterpoint between Canada and the Trump White House on issues, particularly on issues like trade. She was actively involved in those negotiations to end the so-called Section 232 tariffs that the United States put on Canada on steel and aluminum. Eventually, a lot of negotiations back and forth between Freeland and her counterpart at the time, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, who we just learned today is going to resume that role again when Trump takes office in January. So here's what Freeland had to say about the prospects of more tariffs on Canada, part of those global tariffs, somewhere between 10 and 20% on all goods that are imported into the United States from other countries that President-elect Trump threatened during the campaign to impose. Here's what Chrystia Freeland said as she came out of that high-level cabinet meeting today.
Today, our trading relationship is governed by President Trump and Ambassador Lighthizer's trade deal. We renegotiated NAFTA. We now have the USMCA. It's a deal that we agreed with them. That's really important for Canadians to bear in mind. The President and Ambassador Lighthizer have both talked about this deal as being a model trade deal, and I agree with them.
So Minister Freeland and a lot of other cabinet ministers putting on kind of a smiley face, hoping that the USMCA, essentially the updated version of the NAFTA agreement between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, will protect us from future tariffs of this kind. We don't know that to be true. That could happen, or it could be that Trump decides to withdraw the United States from the USMCA. He can do that if he gives the other countries 6 months' notice. There are other issues, though, of course, that a Trump presidency brings that are causing a lot of consternation, and were certainly likely talked about in that cabinet meeting today, particularly things like defense spending. Trump has repeatedly called on other countries, including Canada, to accelerate their defense spending to hit that 2% of GDP target that all NATO member countries have agreed to achieve. And then there's, of course, the immigration piece. Trump is threatening to, and he says now that he's going to make good on this promise once he becomes president in January, that he's going to deport millions and millions of undocumented and or illegal immigrants to the United States. The question is, where do those immigrants go? Do the people start leaving the country, start leaving the United States for other places that might be safe, like Canada? We saw this during Trump's first term. Remember all those crossings, particularly a lot of Haitian immigrants to the United States decided to leave and come to Canada into Quebec through that Roxham Road entry point. That has now been sealed. But the safe country agreement, the safe third country agreement that we have between the Canada and the U.S., it was updated. But we could also see that again. The RCMP has said that they are preparing for this, and they are expecting this something they're going to have to deal with in future as Trump makes good on this other threat. So lots in play right now, but so far it's all kind of like putting a big happy smile on this, saying we're going to talk to the Americans, we're going to emphasize the historic nature of the Canada-U.S. relationship. What we don't know is what Trump will actually do once he becomes sworn in as president again. Will he make good on these threats? Will Canada have another tariff fight on our hands with the second Trump administration? We're all going to find out in January. It's going to be, I think, a very interesting year for Canada-U.S. relations, possibly an interesting 4 years during Trump's second and final term as president. Faiza.
Okay, first meeting down, and certainly not the last. Glenn McGregor in Ottawa, we thank you.